extraordinary level of sacrifice on the road to success. So how is it that investors like us who didn't start out with much money and who don't rely on banks and credit, how is it that we can increase our income and build our wealth in a way that doesn't require us replacing one full-time job with another while still enjoying the things in life that matter most to us? That has always been the big question, and this podcast reveals the answers. I am Carrie Like, and this is the Investor Warrior.
And I think we're back on. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Investor Warrior. Dr. Jess, Carrie, can you hear me well?
Very well, thank you.
All right, fantastic. Well, I want to introduce our host of the Investor Warrior, the venerable Carrie Like. She is the founder of the Investor Warrior, and she is also the founder of the Sherpa Companies, whose origin comes from KBH Corporation, that stands for Carrie Buys Houses, where over the span of about 10 years, Carrie did about 200 real estate transactions, all without the use of banks and credit and with very little capital out of her pocket. And she started that business. This is interesting. She started that business when she was pregnant with her now 10-year-old son. And in fact, her then real estate coach was fond of saying, Carrie does more deals with a baby on her hip than most people do in their entire real estate careers. And as rumor has it, she might not be my wife. So everybody, welcome, welcome to our host, Carrie Like. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, guys.
I see you're in the home office today. I'm in the office. What do we got going on?
So you guys, on today's episode, we have Dr. Jessica Vera, also known as Dr. J. How we go? You and Dr.
Yeah, let me introduce Dr. J, because I got to meet Dr. Jessica. I'm going to say about good 6-8 weeks ago, and we have been on an odyssey of shared experiences, galas, events coming up that we'll talk about in a minute. It has been my privilege and it's been my honor. Dr. Jessica is a serial entrepreneur, the author of The Transformational Principle, with a PhD in forensic psychiatry, focusing on helping trauma victims. By her mid-20s, Dr. Vera had experienced tremendous success. She founded multi-million-dollar corporations, was awarded several accolades, and had spoken on international platforms. But despite her success, there was still only one voice she heard at that time, and it was whispering from deep within saying, "You're not good enough." Her journey from trauma to outward success to inner healing to real sustainable success serves as a real-life platform for the work she does today. A Latin American mother of 2 beautiful daughters, happily married for over 20 years to a man I've met and I just absolutely adore myself. She is an award-winning writer, entrepreneur, and philanthropist, Dr. Jessica Vera. Welcome to the Investor Warrior.
Oh, thank you so much for having me today, Carrie and Howie. This is amazing. I'm so excited.
I will say, too, that your daughters are so beautiful. And I was watching some of your videos on your website today. And were those your daughters in the videos? Did you use them for the videos?
I think so. If you were watching the ones where there's young girls, those are my daughters.
That was so special and so cool.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, they get pulled into everything, whether they like it or not.
I'm sure they do. So Dr. J, tell us a little bit about you and your Superwoman origin story. Where did you get to where you are today? Because it's a beautiful story, you guys. It might be a hard story for some of you to hear, but I think it's beautiful because of what you've turned it into.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm going to just start by prefacing by saying that, I have a philosophy in life, and I believe that all of our setbacks need to be turned into step-ups, right, in life. And so I come from a history of immigrant parents who arrived into a country where they didn't speak the language, knew nothing. Very artistic backgrounds, both of them, and very entrepreneurial themselves. So they jumped in with both feet and started to figure out how they were going to do life in a foreign country, in Canada, not here. And I'm one of 5, the only girl. But the very first stages of my life were not so wonderful. In my early childhood, I had a lot of trauma. I had a lot of sexual trauma, a lot of abuse, a lot of things that happened to me. And I say happen with intention because obviously as a young child, you have no control over the world, right? And so a lot of things happened when I was very young, probably up until the age of 18, There was recurrent incidences of the same. Today they would be called crimes, right? There was a lot of victimization that occurred. And so I grew up in that space and in those experiences, and it really could have shaped my mind. It could have really shaped and really troubled my mind for the better part of my life. And it did until I was about 19, 20 years old, and I was able to venture out on my own, and it came out of necessity. A lot of what I've been able to do in my life, unfortunately, has been from a survivor's mindset, right? When you feel like as though you're cornered and you have no other options but to move in one direction. And so I had a download when I was 19 years old, and it came out of nowhere, honestly. And the download said, you need to break generational trauma. You need to break these generational ties and chains. And so what that turned into, or what I turned it into really, was 5 multi-million-dollar companies within a 3-year span. So by the time I was 22 years old, I was running 5 companies in Canada, had over 500 employees, had no business acumen from history, obviously. Just kind of threw in and just answered the call, as I say, because it was very much to help other people who were finding themselves in similar situations, in trauma, but also in disability and just disenfranchised situations, and helping them to be able to find their potential in very practical ways. And it was in the insurance industry, of all things, and it was disability management, and all 5 companies were interrelated. And it just evolved over a couple of years, but it was, as Howie said, it was like all of the accolades were there. I was getting awards. I was named, the Latin Businesswoman of the Year when I was 22 years old. All kinds of accolades from the world, but nothing was fulfilling. I still felt like a fraud, the imposter syndrome. And I guess what really turned things around was hitting rock bottom, and that occurred around the age of 30. So for about 8 years there, it was just riding the wave of a lot of success. But when I hit 30, I hit it like a pit. I couldn't see beyond that age, and I couldn't see the future. I couldn't see anything. And then I met my husband. In the midst of all that chaos, I met my husband, and he was actually a shining light in the midst of that darkness, and he showed me what a true man was, and he became a beacon of hope for me and helped me to navigate that season in my life. And it was around that time of hitting the pit, meeting him, that I decided to actually sell off all the companies and dismantle them, and to give them away to a lot of the employees that had been with me for those 8 years. And to walk away from all the wealth of those companies had given me, and to step back into wanting to learn more about human potential. Why do these kinds of what kind of impact do these kinds of experiences that I had lived through, and so many thousands that I had worked with had lived through, what kind of impact could it have in their lives, and how does it stifle potential? So for the next decade, I did my PhD, and that was my area of specialization. And I've been a serial entrepreneur because I've built companies all the way through. That's how I paid for the $250,000 education, because I came stateside for that education. Bad. So in Canada, you don't pay for education. Here you do. So I had a lot of companies that kind of helped pay my way through that education. And since then, I've just continued that journey of personally always being an avid learner, dabbling in different business ventures that align with my mission in the work that I do. So in that, my mission is very clear. It's to meet people where they are, usually in the worst situations of their lives, to help them become equipped and to be able to tap into their own potential, and then move them and help them move and transform to the next level in their life. So that's sort of in a nutshell how I've gotten to where I am now.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people listening would think, Wow, you're 30 years old. You have 5 multi-million-dollar companies. Why would you be in a pit? Why can't you look forward when you're so young and you're wealthy and you've got growing businesses? So my question to you is what happened there? Why did you fall into this pit? Why couldn't you look forward into the future? I think in one of your videos on your website, you said it was literally just like black. You could not see past the age that you were at. There was no like future.
Yeah, I think, where most people, when I was younger than that, I used to say, I don't think I'll live beyond the age of 30, just because of all of what I had lived through, right? And so what happened at 30 was that existential midlife crisis that most people go through at 50. I went through it in my 30s, and it was realizing the fact that, I had not really taken the time. What I had done was sought out the successes of the world, but I hadn't taken the time to heal the internal hurts that had happened to that child. And so because of that, I think I hit the wall, and I found myself in a pit where my identity wasn't complete. I wasn't in wholeness. And honestly, I had no belief in anything bigger than myself at the time. It was all driven by ambition and wanting to achieve. And so that came to a head at 30. Yeah, that came to a head. And then I realized, definitely there's so much more than just myself, something much greater, and that I needed to shift my entire existence away from the world and more towards finding peace and wholeness. And because I had always worked helping others, so I thought somehow, some way that compensated for all the things that had been done to me, and it really didn't. So I had to take the time to do that work.
So then you went into, your degree is in psychology now? Your PhD?
Yeah, my PhD is actually in philosophy, clinical psychology, leadership, and entrepreneurialism. So I did a much, yeah, that's why it took me 11
10 years.
Yeah, when I went to defend my dissertation, they were like, you do what? Because normally, you pick one of those.
Right. But I would say that's a really good combination if you had to have like a handful of like degrees, right? Or industries that you're studying in, that those all probably feed each other.
I did. And, I was lucky. I don't believe in luck, actually. I was blessed. I was blessed by finding a professor who was willing to take on the challenge and who chaired my dissertation, because everyone else had turned me down. And she was of the mindset that I was ahead of my time, is what she kept telling me. You're so ahead of your time. And I'm like, you're probably right. I'm probably not even supposed to be living in this time yet.
That when you go through trauma as a child, you are way ahead of your time, unfortunately and fortunately sometimes,
Well, that is the mystery, right? So when you have trauma, it stunts your development. In actuality, it stunts your maturity, right? The brain doesn't evolve the way that a normal brain would evolve if you hadn't experienced it. But you're right, in many ways, the experiences of the world had exposed me to so much more at such a young age that it gave me a different perspective, like a different vision of what was ahead of me. I believe with my entire heart that that's the reason why the download was so clear for me, and I knew exactly what to do with those companies, because how else would I have built them? It's nothing that I did, but I couldn't recognize it at the time. I was very egocentric. I was all about me and the world and what can I do and how can I achieve and how many letters can I get behind my name? How many dollars can I have in my bank account? But at 30, it just all came tumbling down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You've mentioned the download a couple times. I'm not sure I've heard that term before. Can you elaborate on, is it a transformation that you went through? Was it the bolts of lightning? What was the download?
The best way to describe it, it was a very vivid dream. It was just a very vivid dream. And it's happened to me, very infrequently, but two very distinctive times in my life. Once then, when I started those companies, and then again about 10 years ago, just before I started the foundation. And it's like, I'm conscious in my sleep, and I'm just seeing a very vivid dream, but it doesn't necessarily tell me the details, if that makes sense. It's kind of like a vision into the future without all the details of how to get there, but it's the end mark. And so I'll often say, you know, when you want to get somewhere, re-engineer the end, because you'll get there in that manner. So that's what a download is for me. And it's, yeah, it was very distinctive both times that it's occurred in my life.
Yeah. So you talk a lot about the human potential, which I think is kind of like the human condition. We're all trying to work to be the best version of ourselves. We're all trying to reach our full potential. And as human beings, a lot of us feel like we're falling short, especially entrepreneurs, right? It's like this malady that we're all suffering from is, are we living up to our human potential? How is it that you go about coaching people? Because you work with a lot of people in business. How is it that you help them to achieve and to recognize what their potential is?
So I would tell you it's two very, very distinctive factors. One being completely open. I mean, I think that is, as human beings, we have to be completely flexible and open, and that plasticity of the mind obviously becomes less and less as we age, right? So when I work with people, the first thing I have to do is gauge where they are. So I have to step into their operating system of the world, and that usually will give me some insight as to the things that they've learned, because a lot of what you know, we manifest in life has to do with our past experiences and our learning and how we managed it. If there's flexibility, there's the ching, okay, first facet that needs to be there, and then the other is be teachable. You know, they both have to, those two ingredients have to be there. Like if you have the mindset of being teachable, which means that you don't think you know it all, then you don't think that there are the limits that we normally impose are because of the fact that we think we know everything. But the reality is we know nothing. And as long as you maintain that mindset that you know nothing and there's always something to learn and you're flexible, then the limits are removed and your potential is very broad. Right? It's very broad. And then it's just helping individuals gain clarity by eliminating too many choices. Yeah.
And you work with both people who have had trauma like you, but also just people who just feel stuck and they don't know why?
Yeah, absolutely. I love working with people, period. And I just find that when you're able to step into their world, you know, they may not even be aware of the fact, because unconsciously they might have experienced things that are imprinted, but they are not aware of it. So I believe that it's actually more traumatizing to bring things to the surface that don't need to be there. And so I work with people, and depending upon what their goals are, if they're, you know, if they're seeking to level up personally, we have to look at kinds of the things that are stumbling, what is blocking them from moving forward. But if it's from a professional or from a business development perspective, it's really looking at their perception of their operating of their companies. So what is the business model and what is the flexibility in the strategies that they're using? So I overlay the same principles, but in you know, from a different perspective, depending upon what they're wanting to achieve.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm curious, Dr. J, kind of going back, like these stories of early success, early adult success, they always fascinate me. And I'm curious if you would think that, you know, at 22 years old with multi-million-dollar companies, how much of that was there any connection to your childhood experiences and the trauma to the focus that you had at that age? Or do you think that's who you would have been regardless?
I think that the connection is the ability to persevere at that young age, because at that young age, you're so egocentric that you think you know it all, right? And that you're unconquerable, right? But because of what I had gone through, I had a different sense of reality. I knew that I was very vulnerable and that I had been broken. And so when I looked at opportunities and I looked at the possibilities of failure, having had those types of experiences, which I, you know, at the time I didn't quantify it as failures, but now looking back, I see that that's probably how, even at that young age, I was seeing it. It made it less the fear was not there. Like, so there was no fear to fail because I had connected with that part of me before. There was no risk to take because the vulnerabilities had already been exploited before. So a lot of what people fear, a lot of what stops people from taking a risk, I had already gone through as a very young person. And a lot of the work that I was doing was very opportunistic because of the fact that I could see those opportunities that weren't so visible to others because they didn't see things the same way I did.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it was very connected. Even to this day, I mean, I'm in my 50s now, and all the work that I've ever done, when I look back at my life, I see the connection points, like why human trafficking, why mental health, why psychiatry, why trauma, why these kinds of businesses and not these kinds of businesses. Like there's been a pattern that's pretty distinctive and connected to those early experiences. And that's why I truly believe that, even though those experiences were more than likely, things that could have destroyed me,
Mm-hmm.
I was blessed in that I was given the opportunity to turn them into the leverage points that I could use throughout my life to really help me move forward.
It's clear to me that you were able to, at a very young age, almost intuitively use them as strengths. And I know that you work with people. I'm sure, I'm guessing, my hallucination is that you work with many, many people who've had similar traumas, and it's having the opposite impact on them. It's stopping them. It's holding them back. Is that a correct solution? What do you say? What is the message to those people?
In my profession, you never use your personal story. You're taught not to. I guess in that regard, I've broken that that rule many a time. Right? Many a times I've broken that rule from the perspective that one of the biggest things I'll be told when I see that blatant loss of potential and that wavering with life and death, right? It's you'll never understand what I'm going through. Like you can't possibly understand what I'm going through. And so in those circumstances, I'll say, what you see isn't always what's there. And so you need to take a minute, and then I'll share a little bit about whatever parts of my story will resonate and help them understand that, you're not alone in the things that are horrifically happening in this world. Mm-hmm. And that you have the ability, you can move forward. And this too shall pass, I always say. You will get on the other side of this if you just persevere. Yeah.
I always find it fascinating how two people can have the same experience but go in two different ways with it. And I'm always asking, why does that happen? And there's probably no definitive answer to the why, because it's a whole bunch of different dynamics that play into it. I'm wondering with you, did you have a mentor? Did you have someone there to guide you to the better path versus the less,
So Carrie, you hit my dissertation. That was my dissertation. The why.
Why, right?
Yeah, so it took me 11 years, right?
Break it down in 2 minutes? Is that even possible?
Yeah, no, it took me 11 years and 47-page document of all the research as to the why. Why
it's because it's just so interesting. And we can take anything, right? It doesn't have to be sexual abuse or physical trauma. It can just be the less than ideal parents. I don't know, right? But just
absolutely.
And you go down this path of that you didn't really think you were ever going to go down, and then all of a sudden you're going down it. Why, right?
My simple answer is God. That's my simple answer. I mean, my faith at 30 was what saved my life, second to my husband. So, at that point I had contemplated and planned out a way to end my life at that point. I didn't think there was more to live for. And so definitely God, and then Ariel, my husband. So in terms of a mentor, I would tell you there's many people who attempted to step in and to kind of speak wisdom into my life, and so I'll never forget them. And they were very instrumental in moving me a little bit in the right direction. But ultimately, it becomes a question of faith, and understanding that you have purpose and you have a mission to complete and a call to complete in this world. And that even if you're not clear in that moment what that might look like, you just need to put one foot in front of the other and take a step forward. And each one of those steps is going to make things a little bit clearer. Had I taken a different path, or had I gone down a different path, I did. Like, there was moments in my life, seasons in my life, where I went down the wrong path, but the correction was pretty quick. Thank you, Lord. The correction was pretty quick. People were brought into, I crossed paths with people who saw that I wasn't moving in the right direction, and they helped me adjust my course. Ariel, I would say, was probably one of the most instrumental. Yeah.
Wow.
So the foundation, you founded the foundation years ago. Yeah. Can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the foundation has to do with the gala this weekend that we're going to attend.
Yeah,
so definitely wanted to chat about that. Tell us a little bit about the foundation, what it's doing, and where we're going.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you asked about the second download, right? The second download happened, right at the precipice of the foundation. I had been asked to climb some very big mountains. I think I shared that with you before. So they had gone to Kilimanjaro in Africa, and they had climbed that huge ass mountain. And I was asked, like, would you like to come along? And I was like, yeah, no. And I had heard of human trafficking across the pond, I had never heard of it domestically. At that time in my life, I was doing, we had just transitioned to the United States. I was finished my dissertation. I was trying to figure out where I was supposed to plug in here. I wasn't doing business. I was really trying to figure out the systems. And so I started working for the Department of Children and Family and Juvenile Justice System, and started all of a sudden being thrown into working with commercially sexually exploited children, not because I chose, just because that's just the way my life evolved. And while I was doing that, I get asked to do this mountain climb. I say no. Then they say, please, please, please train with us. I trained. I am a stiletto girl, not a hiking boot girl. So I end up with fractures in my feet. I cannot climb. But the following year, I am able to climb. And just in that year of training, like you mentioned, Carrie, I recruited my eldest daughter to come with me. Little did I know, at that time, she was being recruited online. So she's about 15, 16 years old. She's been, she's in that whole heyday. We're talking now a good 15 years ago, not quite 15 years ago, 12 years ago. So we're talking when the internet just started to pop and the kids were really starting to get on social media and finding their identity there. And she fell into that. And so she was being groomed without my knowledge. Went on for about 6 months while we're training for this mountain, while I'm supposed to be, the expert in commercially sexually exploited children, working on task forces. All of this is happening within the four walls of my own home, and I was oblivious.
Wow.
You can, I'm sure, appreciate from my background, I had been a helicopter parent from the moment I conceived both girls. The Lord gave me 2 girls of all things, right? So it's even worse for them, poor girls. And so I'm asked to do this climb. I find out she's being groomed. I work with the task force. So all this is happening at the same time. And I'm able to intervene. My colleagues are able to intervene. We ping the address. Turns out to be a pedophile, part of a human trafficking ring. Of course, I go on the climb. All of this evolving at the same time. And while I'm away in Tennessee, where the climb is occurring, I get a download. Howie. I get a download, and it looks nothing like what you might expect. I get this download, this image of like just a horde amount of people, pushing back darkness, and just an abundance of like dollar bills all over the place. Like, that was sort of the image, right? It was the weirdest image in the world, and I had no idea why. I came to find out it was because the Lord was about to tell me to just stop again and get rid of everything again, and to just stop cold And so I learned from one of the missionaries that were on this walk that, money was a huge issue. Like we had just raised almost $300,000 amongst 87 women that were climbing these mountains, and not a dime was going to her mission, which was to rescue the children. And it broke me. I was like, this is unconscionable. How is it that we could be raising all this money? Where does it go? Right. And come to find out that nonprofit in the US and nonprofit in Canada have very different meanings. Administrative costs and all sorts of things were eating up what we had raised versus it going to the people that really needed the help. So when I came back, I said, Ariel, I need you to let me stop working. And he's like, what?
Years of getting your degree, you're gonna that's it.
I'm like, I was told I got to stop working. I got to do this. I got to build a company, but a company that's non-for-profit, like truly non-for-profit. He's like, what? He goes, what? You're not making an income? At the time, I was making a pretty good income because I've never been one for one stream of income, always 6 or 7 at a time. So it was kind of like, he's like, are you kidding me? I'm like, no. So thankfully, he's an angel. So he let me take 5 years cold turkey off, and I started the foundation. And it started from the perspective of having been personally touched by my daughter's experience and seeing how it destroyed her, and recognizing that the internet was both a friend and a foe, and trying to figure out ways that we could provide security online. So cybersecurity became a huge focus, and education became a huge focus, and a lot of restorative work became a huge focus of the foundation. Spoke to all my colleagues, all my friends at the time. Everyone shunned me because they were like, what are you talking about? There's no such thing as domestic human trafficking. I'm like, listen, I'm seeing it every single day. They're like, no, you got to be kidding me, blah, blah, blah. I was like, look and look and look, until finally a very close and dear friend of mine who I met here 20 years ago said, okay, I'll do what I need to do. Just tell me what to do. And we were both in healthcare at the time. So she jumped in. We started the foundation with another philanthropic partner. And that's the history of it. That's where it started. Where it started to where it is a totally different ball game. Where we are now is we are a 100% volunteer-based organization. So everyone just gives time, talents, and their gifts to the organization. We hired our very first person because my biggest thing was that there was going to be no administrative costs. It was going to be 100% nonprofit. And we have shifted to doing a lot of prevention work because we feel that if we can prevent it from occurring in the first place, then we save ourselves a whole lot of hurt on the restorative side, not just in dollars and cents, but also lives. And so the gala we're having on Saturday is actually the launch after 3 years of empirical work and clinical work and practical best practice work. We're launching Traffic Proof, which is a curriculum that's going to be available in different mediums for children as young as 5 and as old as 99, in order to be able to teach them how to become more aware and intentional about their safety. Because trafficking is a $1 trillion industry now. It has surpassed drug and weapons trafficking. The U.S. is the #1 consumer of sex in the world. So more and more people are becoming aware. And once you've seen it, you can't close your eyes to it. But it's such a mammoth of a problem that most people think they can't do anything about it. And so the foundation stands in the gap to show that everyone can do something. It doesn't require you to solve the problem. It just requires you to, raise your hand and say, yes, what can I do? And so, we're really excited. This is our 6th year. We're turning the corner, like any small business. If you can make it to the 7th year,
nonprofit, which is
So we're turning the corner. Listen, it may be a nonprofit from the perspective that nobody earns anything, but we operate like a very tight corporate operation. We do, and we have a lot of business models within. So we have an internal publishing house, we have curriculum base, we have men's groups, we have women's groups. We're doing a lot of different business strategies within the organization so it can be self-sustaining.
Yeah.
But again, right, we're up against a mammoth of a financial industry. It is criminal enterprise, but they are trillions, easy.
Those numbers are staggering. That human trafficking is larger than the drug world is just, it's mind-blowing. I don't even think people that can even like set in their head straight.
They really can. So we have to kind of scale it down and bring it to our backyard and just say, with what just happened on the West Coast, the war campaign and COVID, we saw a 72% increase in the cases just at the domestic level in CSEP, which are the commercially sexually exploited children. We might have seen, 8 to 10 cases a month. I've been seeing 50 to 60 cases. So that gives us a much more practical understanding of what we're dealing with. So
I'm sorry, when you say what has happened on the West Coast, are you talking about the storm, the hurricane?
Oh yeah, any kind of natural disaster that creates basic vulnerabilities, like not having shelter, not having food, not having basic resources. That's what the traffickers prey on.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the organization's name? The foundation.
Absolutely. So I passed that by real quick. The name of the foundation, the DBA, is Elite Foundation, and Elite stands for End Lost Innocence to Exploitation. The legal original name, so you could just really die laughing, is Elite Performance Academy, Inciting Souls to Action. That's where it started. In 2016, I said, no.
Shorter is better. Elite. I like Elite.
Yeah, Elite. Elite is the name.
The Elite Foundation. Do you want to talk a little bit about the gala that's coming up on?
The gala on Saturday is our 6th annual signature event. It's called One Day to Freedom. It's our one day to gather all the influencers in the community to be able to lock shields and to fund freedom. So we are raising resources to be able to get that traffic-proof curriculum into every school, every private school, every parent group, wherever children and caregivers and stakeholders live. We want to be able to provide that. And so that is what Saturday is all about. We're seeking to fund that initiative over the next 24 months. It's taken us, like I said, almost 3 years to bring it to fruition, but we're super proud of it. And so we're meeting at the Coral Ridge Yacht Club on Saturday, and it's going to be a lovely event. We've got some amazing collaborative speakers who are going to take the stage. It won't be me. Yay! Speaking is not my thing. So we've got Sean Callaghy, who's going to be center stage taking it, as well as a longtime supporter of the foundation, Brad Cohen. And it's just going to be, hopefully it's going to be a very successful event. We all pray that it will fund freedom as we need it to.
Well, that is exciting. I know I'm going to be there on Saturday, so can't wait to see you guys. And what do you got, Carrie?
Dr. Jess, where can people reach out to you if they want to connect with you?
Sure. If they want to connect with me personally, it's at drjvera.com. And if they want to connect with me through the foundation, it's drjvera@elitefundsfreedom.org. I got to think.
Say that one more time.
Certainly. It's Dr. J. Vera at elitefundsfreedom.org.
Okay, good. I just didn't want to make sure that got lost. So
no worries.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story. And I love what you're doing. I think that it's such a huge problem, and it's a problem that is in everyone's backyard. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter where you live in the United States. You can live in the poorest of neighborhoods or the wealthiest of neighborhoods. And as a mom, this is something that is always in my head when I'm thinking about my children and where they are, and do I know that they're safe, and are they online doing what they're supposed to be doing, or are they online falling into dangerous situations? And so I love that not only are you helping to get children out of it, but really it starts with prevention and making sure that kids don't fall into it in the first place. And so everything that you're doing, just as a mom, I appreciate so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to add to what Carrie said, and you're one of the most amazing personalities I've met in a long time, Dr. J, and just a tremendous role model for overcoming adversity, business acumen. I mean, we've had a lot of laughs about how many businesses you've started, you and your partner in crime down there, Wendy, and all the crazy situations that you've been in. We could probably do a couple podcasts on just those alone, which would be fun. We should probably do that. And so, just what an amazing role model. Everybody, if you want to connect with some of the most amazing people in the world, Dr. J is one that I recommend to connect with.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be with both of you this afternoon. And actually, Carrie, you have done something that I'm just dabbling in now, wanting to learn more about. So I'm going to be looking to you.
Unfortunately, I won't be.
I love the idea of investing without going to the banks.
I won't be at the gala because I'll be taking care of our kiddos while Howie goes to the gala. But yes, we will definitely need to catch up and connect. Yeah,
you guys should connect for sure. We'll make that happen.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, guys. That's it for today. We'll see you on the next episode. And remember, you are only one deal away. Take care.
All right. You can stay. Let me end the broadcast. Boom.